Hello, welcome to this session. My name is Engineer Ouma, and in this session I'll take you through working with PHPMyAdmin in conjunction with MySQL database. And by the end of this session, you should be familiar with PHPMyAdmin and working with MySQL database inside PHPMyAdmin. So without wasting time, what is PHPMyAdmin? PHPMyAdmin is a free software tool written in PHP intended to handle the administration of MySQL over the World Wide Web. It can manage a whole MySQL server and that needs a super user as well as a single database. PHPMyAdmin supports a wide range of operations with MySQL, and the most frequently used operations are supported by the user interface, which is managing databases, tables, fields, relations, indexes, users, permissions, and many others. So while you still have ability to directly execute any SQL statement. So going to PHPMyAdmin, if you want to access PHPMyAdmin, you should have a localhost server installed if you are not working inside a website backend or inside. Alright, now we are working inside a localhost server, and I'll take you through working with PHPMyAdmin inside a localhost server, and I encourage you to practice as to also open your PHPMyAdmin as I do my demonstrations here. So first I'll have to start my localhost server, and the localhost server I am using now is XAMPP. And if you don't know how to install a localhost server, I have a tutorial here on how to install a localhost server, which is XAMPP. So I'll open my localhost server. So opening my localhost server, if you need any direction, I have a full tutorial on how to install and start localhost server. So I have my XAMPP server running, and I'm working on XAMPP version 7.45, and you can see, and MySQL and Apache web server are running. MySQL server is running on port 3307 to avoid clash with any SQL server running. So I'll go to my browser and search for localhost. So I have my localhost dashboard here. Next, I go to PHPMyAdmin. Now this is PHPMyAdmin, and here we write and execute MySQL statements. So straight to PHPMyAdmin, all these are databases which are created, and I'll take you through all these on how to use them, on how to create a database here, how to create tables, how to drop tables, drop databases, alter, and all that SQL queries that you may need to execute here. So first, if you come here, you have to create a database first, and creating a database, you can use MySQL statement, or you can use this database point that I can say has already prepared queries. So we have prepared queries running in the background, and whatever you have to do here is just to write the name of your database. So the name of our database will be called tutorial 1, and when I click on create, my database will be called tutorial 1, and when I click on create, I'm supposed to have my database tutorial 1 created over here without any table. Same if I go to MySQL here, here's as in this SQL, you write queries. We write raw queries here, and I can say create database tutorial 2. Create database tutorial 2 and go. I have my query executed, and you can see access side. So I have both two databases, one I created through here, and the next I created using a raw SQL statement. Next so that's how we create tables, and if I want to create tables, I can use the same criteria here, and I'll be writing I'll be naming my table. So I want to create a table called users, and I want to create a table called users, and let me call it users with 3 columns, and I click on go. So my tables, I'm in the process of creating the tables. So what I'll do, I'll call it user ID, user name, and user email. User ID, I'll give it an int, a length value of 11, and I'll give it an auto increment, and set it as the primary key, and set it as not null. It can't be null because it's our primary key. The next, I'll have username, which is a varchar, and it has maximum of 90 characters. The next is user email, which is a varchar and a maximum of 80 characters. After that, I click on save, and it's supposed to execute my statement. I say that we have prepared SQL statements running on the background, and you can see my table here. Since I can view my tables, if I go to SQL, I should see the query that is used, and I can see select all from users where that. So select all from the table where. So I have MySQL, I have my tables created. I can have the same tables created through an SQL statement where I'll write create table, username, password. I'll create tables, user ID, user name, and user email, and I should end my statements in my queries in a semicolon. So I'm not going to teach how to use how to write MySQL queries, and if you want to use PHPMyAdmin and MySQL, first you must learn how to write MySQL queries, because here you will be writing MySQL queries, and you can see my table columns under the table users inside the database tutorial 1. Next is search, and let me just do that. Next is search, and here I can search using a wildcard. I can search data inside a table, I can search a table inside a database. So we have table search, and you can search any table inside the database tutorial if you have so many tables. Yeah. Next is we have the insert, and insert here you can insert values inside these tables, and user ID I'll leave it blank, username I'll call it test, user email I'll call it test@gmail.com, and I go. You can see one row inserted. Mark you, we didn't enter the user ID because it's an auto increment value, and it's our primary key. So if we go to our table users, and we're supposed to see our input. So that's how we use the insert inside our tables, and we can insert values in our columns inside the table. Next is import. And you can import a database to your desktop or to any file storage, file manager, after you finish working with your database, and it will be a portable file with the extension .sql. An example of a exported database is this client msqdb.sql, and if you open, you can see it has SQL statements here. So it will just export it as in form of SQL statements. And the next we have is import, and in import does directly opposite. So directly opposite, what I mean is that you can pick a file, an SQL file that you already have, for either from a source code, and we can insert it to our database in PHPMyAdmin. So first you have to do, before you import, come to browse, and or come to structure, or MySQL and create a database. So here we already created a database called tutorial 2, and in this tutorial 2 now, until you come here and you see the database set to tutorial 2, then you can now import a database. You choose a file and it will take you to your file manager, and you choose the location of that SQL file. You should have the extension .sql for it to be imported, and the queries inside that .sql file must be correct for all of them to be executed. If you need a full tutorial on how to import a database, I have a full tutorial down here that you should watch to know how to import a database and how to troubleshoot any SQL query that you might encounter while working with or while importing MySQL database. I have the tutorial, it's down here, you can watch it now. Operations. In operations here, we are not writing any SQL query, and just the way we created our database using the structure. So here we'll be creating a tables using structures. We'll not be writing queries. So I discourage this, and I encourage that first learn SQL queries and try building your database using queries, your own queries. So here you can create a table, and we had created a table. So you can rename a database, you can drop a database, drop a table, you can copy a database, and many more. The next is privileges, and in privileges here we can add more users, and in more users we only have root users, and we can add our own user and give privileges. So I can add a user account and give this user the privileges either as a super user or just a user, and we can grant him permission either to create alter tables or alter the database, or either to delete, either the user can delete the file, or can delete any entry, can update the database, can insert into the database, can execute any query, or and we can make this user a super user so that the user can have administrative privileges, and he can either log tables, reload, grant, and currently we are logged in as a root user who is a super user, and that's why we can create other users and grant them privileges. So first you have to grant all these privileges. We can limit this user, and we can limit him resources that we need the user to make 2 tables per hour, or to make these queries per hour, or to make these updates to our database per hour, or to make these connections in our database per hour, and they can be connecting to our database using PHP. So that's to do with SSL also. We can limit the user's privileges and the user's resources in SSL. And in setting, we can export our setting from another database that we have as a database file, and have those settings enforced into our database. So we can merge settings from another database we can import settings from another database and merge them with our database. Same, we can import now our settings that we made here and export them as a file, as a PHP file or as a JSON file. Then another user can use them in his or her database. So they're just more to do with PHPMyAdmin. Here we have variable, char set, character set, engines, and plugins. So many times you won't be using this, and as a beginner user, you will only be using databases, MySQL, maybe status. There is nothing you will be doing in status. User count if you want to create more users, and export and import. So in export, what export does, you can export this database to such a file that I showed you that another user can import into his database. So you will export that database and give it a name like client msdb.sql, and it must have this extension .sql for it to be recognized as an SQL file. So you will select a template and export it into your file manager. So you can change the format either to SQL, to PHP array, to PDF, or any to CSV. CSV is comma separated values, Microsoft Excel, LaTeX, and any other format that you may need your database exported to. So all these are databases and these are tables inside our database tutorial 2. And before I end, I want to show you how to drop a database if you want to delete a database or drop a table. So I'll just select on this database and let me select on tutorial 2 and I go to operations, then I say drop database, and you are about to destroy a complete database. So be sure before you drop a database and check first, and I say okay. So my database tutorial 2 will be deleted and you can see MySQL returned an empty result set and 0. Next I can drop a table.